I'll call the meeting to order. Before we get started, let's introduce everyone in this meeting. I'm Sandy Brock. When I call your name, please confirm. You can hear me by verifying that you are present, starting with the commissioners. Jonathan,
Present.
Mira,
Present.
Noah,
Present.
and Travis is not here tonight. We'll go with staff. For staff, Leah.
I'm here.
All right, can hear you. All right. This open meeting of the Conservation Commission is being conducted remotely via Zoom pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12th, 2020 order, as most recently extended on March 29th, 2023. Access information for the public has been provided on the town website. This meeting is being recorded. Please remember to mute your phone or computer when you're not speaking. This is done on the phone by pressing *6. As chair, I will introduce each speaker on the agenda. Please note that you will not have screen sharing privileges, but staff can display any visuals per your cue. During periods of public comment, participants must use their raise hand icon in the Zoom menu bar to indicate they would like to speak. This is done phone by pressing *9 and then pressing *6 to unmute when you are called on. Participants who raise their hands will be recognized one at a time and will be promoted to speak. Finally, each vote taken will be conducted by a roll call vote. As a reminder, the Commission is concerned with state and town wetlands and stormwater regulations. Concerns outside of this purview need to be addressed to the appropriate boards. For example, road conditions must be addressed with Select Board, and traffic concerns must be addressed with the Planning Board. Okay, so just after 7, any kind of action items that we need to take ahead of time?
The discussion item that came in under the 48-hour window, we do have an attendee here for that.
Okay.
If you want to start there.
Yeah, you want to give just kind of a summary on that one?
Sure. So it's 5 Stratton Road. They have an order of conditions from us for the single-family house that was built. We required our standard no disturb signage and a barrier. The applicant who's here tonight, Dave Glispin, has been in communication with us about that doing boulders is kind of excessive because a lot of the lot touches the no disturb. I did mention that fencing, like split rail fencing, is acceptable instead, but he wanted to talk through options with the commission, and I can pull up the plan in the meantime.
That would be great.
Hi, this is Dave Glispin. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. And once we get the plan up, we'll start the discussion.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Can you see that?
Yes, I can.
Okay. So just to point out for you guys, you can see my mouse move, right?
Yep.
Okay, so the no disturb wraps around the north and the east
Okay.
on this lot.
Yep. So just to give you kind of a background on, this requirement, this is a pretty standard condition that we have. And we don't want to tell homeowners what to do, but what we're looking for is some sort of barrier. Like whether it's, as Leah had said, whether it's a split rail fence or it's or if it's the boulders or whatever else, it's really meant to do kind of two things. One is to show a barrier so that people know, and if say you sell your house, the person comes in, they'll see that barrier with the signs on it so they understand they can't, do any, cutting or anything else in the no disturb zone. Um, those are two kind of typical ones that we see. We're not, it's not like we say if there isn't a different type of barrier, however you want to define that, with the signs, we're pretty flexible. The whole idea is that we're trying to prevent, sins of other type of projects that like this, i.e., just someone going in and just putting grass clippings in the wetlands or in the buffer in that no disturb zone. So we're pretty flexible as long as it serves a purpose as being a barrier in a notification that that's a no disturb zone and you're not supposed to be doing work in it. So if you've got any suggestions or you have any other different approaches, we're obviously open to kind of that discussion.
So by way of history, I owned the Sunshine Sign Corporation in North Grafton for 37 years. I just
Yep.
had the pleasure of transferring it to my sons. But in the past, we used to do placards from our graphics department that we provided to the conservation department that just showed a kind of a minimal stake with
Yep.
your verbiage on it. And I'm wondering if that's appropriate.
So Leah, confirm that that's also a requirement here,
Yeah,
correct?
both.
Yeah, and the other part of it, and again, it has to do with experiences, is that sometimes those signage isn't enough, and people then still creep their lawns and so forth. So having quote a barrier, and we want to be flexible with it. We don't want to, if you have kind of an idea of what kind of barrier you want, so that it's not easily altered. And I'm less worried, or we don't see it as much as like when the homeowner first gets it and does it and has done this project and they understand it. It's usually when the house gets turned over a few times and then you have people in the future not understanding what those things are. And if there's some sort of barrier, they'll start asking the questions. They might actually even read the signs. Um, so, you know, so we're flexible in what that is. So like, the boulders are one thing that a lot of times when a house is constructed, you have it on site, and we just say we just don't want big gaps between them so people can't mow it. And it's all based on the previous experiences. So I don't know if you have any other kind of suggestions, like the split rail fence seems to be not too much of a thing. And again, it's just setting that kind of barrier in addition to just having the signs on there, and the signs are every 20 feet and so forth. So absolutely fine that you're asking the question. We're looking to work with you. But we just understand that if you just put the signs in, and yes, they're not that big and so forth, people will begin to encroach on the no disturb zone. That's our
Well,
experience.
I guess, so being a lifelong resident of Grafton and being a business owner in Grafton and always owning property in Grafton and having my business in Grafton and choosing to relocate in Grafton, I would suggest that I have a very strong love of the town. And being a former police officer, I appreciate your efforts for regulation to protecting natural areas. So I also listened closely, saying that the original homeowner understands the boundaries and respects them in a sale aspect that may not be as
Correct.
adhered to as you would like. But I'm 77 years old and I have no intention of moving. So I'm actually, I spend a lot of money on landscaping. I used to live at 238 Brigham Hill Road, and I literally put 30 to 35 hours in my yard. So I'm very
So
cognizant of the fact that the Stratton Road lot that I took was next to the tennis club, and I'm trying to maintain the natural integrity of that whole area. So I don't want to do the boulders, which you said I can get relief from.
yep.
I really would prefer not to do the split rail fence in the back, because I've got a $50,000 patio in the back, and it just doesn't go with my landscape concept. So can you folks help me with another suggestion? Or
Sure.
can I do something that is less obtrusive? And I'm more than happy to have your conservation agent meet me at the house and
Yep.
talk through this, because like I said, I've lived in Grafton all my life, and I have a lot of respect for what you do.
Yeah. So so you mentioned that you're doing a lot of landscaping and so forth. There's also different various ways of doing barriers with planting material.
Okay.
And just like, and again, it's coming up with something that is a barrier, but it's a green barrier. An easy one is doing different, dense bushes that have, like not saying you're going to do a briar back, a batch with all, you know, thorns and stuff in it, but there's different. I mean, I think there's a different approach with doing, some sort of dense planting that someone wouldn't easily be able to walk through or
Okay,
bring a lawnmower through. And you
okay.
could kind of edge just the area that's there. Um, Leah, we've done that. Have I thought we have done that in the past. Um,
I don't recall anyone doing
it
anything
was,
beyond the split rail fence and boulders, but I mean, as long as it achieves the purpose we're
yep.
going for.
I think it was a while ago, but there's definitely different. And I'm an engineer. I'm not a landscape person. So, but there's definitely different planting schemes that you can do so that it's green, but it provides a dense, almost like a hedge or barrier that's not easily just punched through, and then you just put the signs in front of it and so forth. So, is that something that type of approach? Because again, we don't want to tell you what your yard needs to look like. We just want to provide a protection to what we're responsible for.
Okay, so without bothering the commission again, who guides me?
So that's a great question. So what we can do is I can check in with each of the commissioners tonight, and then we can kind of delegate it to staff so that you could. Leah, are you comfortable with that?
Yeah.
Yeah. So then you could delegate it to staff, and you could come up with an approach, whether you talk to someone who's a landscaper or a landscape architect or someone who's in the nursery business that can give you that type of. It's not unusual to do that type of bordering, type of dense vegetation that would help you to keep the green look, but create that barrier that, you know, that we're kind of looking for because of our past experience.
So I
Um,
only want to do it once, so I can do it in concert with Leah and
yes.
she can do proof of concept and say, yes, you're okay.
Yep. So, and I'm looking at Leah. She doesn't realize this, but I'm looking for her to kind of confirm what I'm going to propose, which is basically this could be would be a minor. And again, I have to go around to the rest of the commissioners to make sure they're in agreement with this, that what you're doing is a minor change, and that can be. Leah, is there anything that we need to do for that minor change?
So I actually don't know if we need to call it a minor change because
Okay.
our condition is worded just that a barrier is needed and we give the examples
Yep.
of what we usually see, but I don't believe it's worded like it has to be, and it wasn't on this actual plan.
Gotcha.
So he's
So,
suggesting something that would fill in or satisfy that condition. So I'm actually not sure we need to call it a minor change
Oh,
formally, but
good.
I do have
Okay.
a question for you, which is
Certainly.
I'm comfortable like looking at the design he comes up with and saying yes or no, but the question I have for the commission is if he goes the plantings route, we want it to achieve the goal of not being able to push a lawnmower through from day one, right? We don't want to have to wait 3 years for the plants to grow big enough.
Excellent question.
well, how about if I buy a bigger lawnmower? No,
Yeah.
I understand when I was a police officer, we used to see, especially builders from out of town would come in and after the wetlands was flagged, you'd see their pickup truck there at 8 at night moving the flags back. So I get your intent and I strongly support that. So as long as I can work with Leah and I can come up with a joint solution that
Yeah.
is an alternative to the boulders,
Yep.
that would be very helpful.
Yeah. So Leah, I'm thinking depending upon the type of, the spacing you have and the type of planting, I'm thinking of some dense bushes and stuff. They'll have pretty good growth, and maybe there's like a kind of a reasonable, kind of, you know, this is acceptable and we expect this to be filled in within 12 months or something. But I
Okay.
think your question is on point of, we just don't want it to be open-ended, and that,
Okay.
yeah, there's gotta be a final sign off so everyone's all set and this condition has been met, so whatever happens in the future can be done all legally and all that kind of good stuff, so,
Okay.
yeah.
So
And I'm just thinking, yeah. Yes, go ahead.
Gilmore Building Company, from the center of town built the house. He was under the impression that, the order of conditions indicated that I had to do the 250-pound boulders spaced 20 inches apart, which he just did for a house that had, wetlands on Hudson Ave. So
Yep.
is that accurate, or does the order of conditions need to change, or was that just his interpretation of a suggestive thought?
So that's what Leah was just talking about, is
Okay.
that the way the order is typically written is that we'll give a list. A lot of times the boulders are the easiest because they're typically it's available on site and it's the
Yep.
least expensive.
Good
The
point.
Some people don't like the boulder idea and they go with a split rail. So
Okay.
and so Leah's just bringing it up. So
Well, it says shall also be delineated by boulders of 250 pounds or more, placed no more than 20 inches apart. Doesn't say
or
may, it says shall, so can I get the,
yeah.
so can I get?
Or
But-
then you keep going,
Yeah.
or a weathered resistant fence that does not, such as a rail fence along with proposed line erosion control.
Yeah, I see
So,
that.
so it's giving you different,
Okay.
things. What we'll have to do is make sure that, we, at the end of this, give you basically a letter that goes in the file that shows that this has been met,
Got it. Thank you.
No, it's a good question. Those are the things we want to make sure. Um, yeah, so whoever comes in next actually knows what the process is. So at this point, I just want to go around to the commissioners and just get their input to see if they have any issue with what I'm suggesting or if they have something to add to it or maybe a different version. So Jonathan, any questions or any kind of suggestions?
I've always viewed it as boulders or a fence, but I do see that it says or a weather resistant fence that does not impede the movement of wildlife. So hypothetically, a natural fence could be shrubs. So I'm in agreement that that makes sense. I don't know if those are arborvitaes or, like you said, some other form of a natural screening that goes along the property line. But it looks pretty straightforward to me that the wording of that paragraph gives obviously options: boulders, a physical fence, or something that's a weather resistant fence. And I think that's pretty clear that
Yeah.
a dense, and I guess the question for Sandy or Leah or just the group is, how dense is it? Would it be the density would be defined by the 20 inches. So if you've got
Right.
shrubs, you'd place them at 20 inches on center. So that's a lot of shrubs. And I don't know if that's something that limits the type of shrubs or whatever, but I guess it's,
The
you know, I,
choice of the choice of the plant is key. So I've definitely seen on large projects where kind of natural fences are put in. And they're usually done for, whether it's screening or whether it's for, preventing people from cutting through. I mean, there's a lot of different reasons to do that. I just
right.
don't know, to be quite honest, which shrubs and type of planting that would be the best for that. But this is not something that I haven't seen before on projects. So,
Right. No, it makes sense that it's something that would be, it sounds like a reasonable, it still fits the order or the condition, I should say, and it makes sense to me. So no questions, and that's my take, is that it makes sense.
all right, thanks. Amira, do you have any kind of questions or anything else to add to it? Or
I think the only thing I would want to add is whether we can ask that whatever shrubs are chosen, um, that we just make sure that they're not invasive to the area.
absolutely great comment. And I think that would be very reasonable to say that you want, non-invasive plants. Obviously, hopefully, I mean, that list is easy to look at and so forth. So I would agree with that. Yes.
Yeah, so that's the only thing I would want to add is that we just specify that portion. But otherwise, that sounds good to me.
All right.
This plan sounds good.
Sounds great. So Noah, so this is kind of right out of the gate here. You can listen in this particular one. We're not going to be taking a vote or anything. We're just kind of responding to a question from someone that has a outstanding order of conditions, and we're trying to come up with a reasonable process to make sure they can do something a little bit different to meet it and so forth. So, but if you do have any questions or suggestions, feel free to give them or don't ever worry about asking questions. It's just this is right out of the gate for you. So, but I'll leave it up to you. And when we get into the public hearings, we'll talk a little bit about the voting process. And like when Amira started, she kind of abstained from voting on the initial ones just so that she could get a little bit more comfortable in understanding the process and so forth. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. So, as far as this discussion ahead of time, do you have any questions or suggestions or anything else?
No, no questions right now.
All right, thank you. All right, Leah. So this kind of sounds like we can leave this with you. Um, and if you have any questions, just reach out to me and so forth.
Sure.
Okay. So how does that sound? That just kind of coordinate with Leah. I think the tricky part is you're going to need to ask, someone, whether it's someone at the nursery or a landscaper, saying, what would you suggest for kind of a native or non-invasive plant that you could plant that has a pretty fast growth to it so you can space them appropriately. Um, and yeah, and then check in with Leah and then once they get planted and so forth, Leah can go out and check. We can start the process of documenting it so you don't have to worry about anything in the future.
Thank you for your time.
All right, good luck. And I'm very curious to find out what you end up using for the bushes because it might be a new thing that we could suggest for people.
Thank you. Take care.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye now.
All right, Leah. So let's go back up to here. So we have a continuance for the 710 RDA.
Correct.
I will read that in and then we'll do a vote on that. Here we go. Pursuant to the Wetlands Protection Bylaw and the Grafton Conservation Commission will hold a public hearing to act upon a request for determination of applicability for the construction of a single-family house at 12 Clearview Street in Grafton. The applicant has requested a continuance to July 22nd. So can I hear? And so Noah, you'll get a hang of this. So just as an open meeting and so forth, and kind of the governance that we follow. So this person here is asking for continuance. We're not even really going to look at anything. This is going to get continued to the next meeting. So the first thing we need to do is to have a motion to continue this hearing to July 22nd.
I'll make a motion to continue the hearing for 12 Clearview Street to July 22nd.
And do I have a second?
I'll second that motion.
Great. So we have a motion and a second. We'll do a roll call vote. I'll start with Jonathan,
Yes.
Amira,
Yes.
and then Noah. If you feel comfortable, you can say yes, or
Yes.
or you can. Okay, very good. I am also a yes. The motion carries. So one down. Okay. So next public hearing is scheduled for 7:20. You hear that we cannot start a public hearing before the dates. So there's a date and time certain. So if it's listed as a time in our agenda, that means it has to start at 7:20 or afterwards. We can't start a public hearing early because it's been posted and so forth. So in this case here, this is the time on the agenda is 7:20. Now it's 7:26. So I will read this in and we'll get going on this next NOI application. So, pursuant to the Massachusetts Wetlands Protection Act, the Grafton Wetlands Protection Bylaw, the Conservation Commission will hold a public hearing to act upon a notice of intent application for Grafton Wetlands bylaw permit for the construction of a single-family house at 9 Logan Path. Who's here to discuss that tonight?
So I was expecting someone who was not online.
Okay.
It looks like the homeowner is online.
Hi there, yes, I am the homeowner and I did expect Caroline, who's my consultant here, but it doesn't look like he's here. So I'll try my
So-
best to answer any question that you may have.
So we can do a couple things. We can actually continue it to for like a half an hour, and you can see if your consultant's going to be here. It's totally up to you as the owner, and you're submitting this, or you can do the presentation, and then we can ask you questions depending upon what happens. You know, I want to give you the option. If you want, we can try to wait a little bit if you think they're just late, or you just
Would it,
want to go ahead with it.
Could it be an option for me to go now, and then if there's any question that I'm unable to answer, we can kind of hold on to it and see if he can join and then he answer at that?
Okay, so yeah, that it gets a little funky there, but what we can
Okay.
do, is just go through the process. Depending upon where we end, then we can figure
Okay.
out if your consultant is on at that time, or we'll give you some choices. It's not like something just because he doesn't show, or they don't show up, that something, we won't do something. But let's go through
Yeah.
that. So
Okay.
the first thing is to give your name and address. That's just so for the
Sure.
record.
My name is Fu Nguyen, and the property address I'm looking to build is 9 Logan Path. My resident address is 7 Wheeler Circle in Canton, Mass.
Okay. So all right. So why don't we just start with this kind of, Leah, what can you give us an overview of your kind of review of this submittal, of this notice of intent, I should say?
They're looking to demolish the existing house and rebuild on the lot. We did send it for peer review because it was mapped as riverfront behind there, but it's not riverfront, which has been confirmed by Art. It's just a corner of Lake Ripple. So that was one of the big holdups. They filed a while ago, but we were waiting to straighten that out. I do still have some lingering outstanding comments from our administrative review that I can take you guys through. And I'm also not sure if any revisions or follow-up communication has occurred with DEP because they still haven't been issued a file number.
Okay. So just for the applicant, so typically we cannot close a hearing that does not have a file number. So no matter what's going to happen, we'll continue this hearing because we need to have that file number from the state before we can close the hearing. But Leah,
Can- are you-
yeah,
Just so for my knowledge, should that number have an issue, or is there a reason why it's not issue? Is something I need to do on my part?
you can check with the consultant, but typically what happens is when you submit the copies to us, you also submit a copy to DEP, Massachusetts Department of Environmental Protection, and then they issue the number, the DEP number. So they sometimes are slow. It depends upon how busy they are. So it may be that you or your consultant has done everything, but you're just waiting for it. So it's not uncommon for us to have to continue a public hearing because we do not have the DEP number. So
Got it.
check
And
with your
if,
consultant. Yeah.
If that's something that we receive after, can we submit it in lieu of the meeting?
So basically, no. So basically, because we don't have the DEP number, we can't close the hearing tonight, which means we'll have to continue it to the next meeting, which is July
Okay.
22nd. So
Okay.
typically, your consultant would then try to reach out to Mass DEP to find out, what's the status of that number, and then you can check with
Okay.
him and so forth. So,
Okay.
but
Thank you.
just wanted to kind of give your background on that particular process. But we'll continue on, and if Leah, you want to go through your review of the plans and so forth?
Sure.
Sure.
So our lingering comments were, we asked if they're removing the slab and pouring a new one, or if they're building on the existing one. That hadn't been answered yet. We also asked for, there's a floodplain line out in the back of this lot, and we mentioned that we have under our bylaw a no disturb and a buffer zone line from that have not been added to the plans. They also are not showing any utilities or existing or proposed tree lines, if those are applicable. And
Okay.
I also had a question on how the floodplain line that they're showing on the plan was determined versus what's on GIS, because on GIS, floodplain comes up nearly halfway through the house, and there's also floodway at the very back on GIS.
Okay.
Now I know, GIS can be off by several feet, so I just wanted it to be explained how they came up with just this one line
Yep.
in the back.
And so in addition to that, to add to those things is, so they're showing a FEMA zone A with a base flood elevation of 307. Typically, the FEMA line would be an AE if it has an elevation. So that would be an additional question to kind of check with them. The second part of that is just to your point of asking how it was determined. Just because you have an elevation shown, and if it is truly 307, you're showing it between the it's shown between the 306 and 308 contour. However, if the actual FEMA map has it coming up halfway onto the site, you will have to do Loma through through FEMA, because even though you're delineated based on elevation, there's a process that you need to go through. It's not a very elaborate one, but it's just a way that FEMA keeps their records. So that would be a question for the consultant, how it was done, and if there's a velocity zone, that's kind of critical to make sure that's on there. So. I would add those couple of things to as far as the flood zone goes.
Sure.
So, then as far as the other things that you're talking about, utilities, it's important just to understand how the site is being serviced by water, sewer, and power. And the only reason we want to know about that, we don't, as long as it's coming off Logan Path and it's connected, and you have town sewer and you have town water, and there's a septic system that's needed for this site, et cetera, it has an impact. We're only interested in how it impacts the wetlands. That's our jurisdiction. So when we ask for that information, we're just confirming that there's nothing coming through or within the setbacks for the wetlands. As far as the existing proposed tree lines, we're just looking to understand what's on the site, how much trees are going to be cut, and how that plays into our 25-foot no disturb, et cetera. So there's those type of things. These are all fairly straightforward and standard to be on plans. And then just Leah's question, has there been any other kind of revisions since it was sent to DEP? I think that's all that I have for comments, Leah. So leave it to if the applicant wants to, if you have any questions on that, please ask. We're happy to try to explain it. Your consultant should really have that information for you.
Yeah, you should. And I know that I read some of those email asking for those things, and I guess I assumed that he had submitted them, but he hasn't. So
Okay.
I guess I have to circle back to him to nail down all the information. So I appreciate the additional review there.
Okay, so let's continue on, and so we'll do, as part of this public hearing, we'll do a couple of different things. I'll check in with each of the commissioners to see if they have any additional questions or any additional thoughts other than what the staff has done as their review. And then I will open it up to the public, and if there's anyone online here that has any questions or comments, we'll open it up to see if anyone does. So first I'll start with the commissioners. Amira, do you have any kind of questions or comments on this particular site?
No, not at this time.
Okay, Jonathan.
No questions, no comments.
Yeah. And Noah, if you have any questions, please feel free to ask.
No, nothing at this time.
Okay. And then what I'll do now is I'll open this up to if anyone is online, any public has any comments or questions on this project, please raise your hand. We'll keep Leah will keep an eye out to see if anyone is there and see if anyone is raising your hands. And so, and that kind of, so the next steps for us anyway is if your consultant's not here, and if you can't answer some of these questions and some things have not been updated on the plans yet, and we need certain technical responses on the floodplain. We also don't have our DEP number. So, so typically in this case, we would ask for a continuance to our next meeting on July 22nd, or you can continue it to a meeting further, uh, in August or whatever. So I'll go back to the applicant and just say, do you have any questions on this? And this is your time to ask us questions. We're more than happy to answer how this all kind of impacts. But it seems like,
Yeah,
go ahead.
sure, yeah. So I heard the comment you made. Can I assume that, if I have a conversation with my consultant, we address those things, and then those are the items you look to make the decision whether this can move forward or not?
That's absolutely correct. So what typically we'd want to do is that it would say, okay, if you ask us for a continuance to the 22nd, then what your consultant would do is make any of those changes, respond to those comments, and then we would be back here on the 22nd, would go through those comments and so forth, depending upon what they come out with. The other part of that is hopefully you'll have a DEP number by then. It all
Okay.
depends upon staffing at DEP. And sometimes they're really fast and sometimes they're really slow. So, so those are the things that neither you or I have any control over is a DEP
Yeah.
number. And they
Okay.
will also possibly come back with their own comments. So
I
I
see.
guess I guess the question for you is if you want to continue to the 22nd. And the reason
I
why
do.
Okay, great. And it has to be requested by the applicant.
And that one. Okay, and last question, the information that you shared today, the comments, is there somewhere that I can go to locate it? Because I don't think I can remember everything that was said.
Not a problem. Just reach out to the staff, to Leah, and she can give you an email or whatever way
Okay.
you want to do, or stop by or whatever. We can get you those comments. So,
Okay, sounds great. Thank you.
okay. So so next thing I'll ask if anyone from the public has raised their hands.
Nope.
Okay, so there's no public comment. And then what we'll do is we'll make a motion to continue the hearing to the 22nd. And then we'll do a vote on it and then see you on the 22nd. And if you do have questions, feel free to call staff and the town hall, and we'll be more than happy to try to help you out with it. So at this
Okay.
point, do I have a motion to continue the hearing until July 22nd?
I'll make a motion to continue the hearing for 9 Logan Path to July 22nd.
And do I have a second?
I'll second that motion.
Very good. We'll do a roll call vote. Amira, you're on my screen. You get to go first.
Yes.
Jonathan,
Yes.
Noah,
Yes.
I am also a yes. The motion carries. The public hearing has been continued to July 22nd. So thank you very much.
Okay,
And
great.
feel free to reach out to staff
Cool.
if you have any questions. So thank you.
Okay, thank you.
All right. So I need to go back to here. Okay, so the next ones are all continuations, Leah.
Correct.
Is there any particular order or just go right down the page?
Whatever you choose.
I'll start at the top and go right through them. So, okay. So pursuant to the Massachusetts Wetlands Protection Act, the Grafton Wetlands Protection Bylaw, Conservation Commission will hold a public hearing on a notice of intent and application for Grafton Wetlands bylaw permit for upgrades to an existing overhead transmission line along the entirety of line 323 easement across Grafton. So who's here to speak to this notice of intent?
Hi, good evening. Simon Hilt here representing New England Power Company, Epsilon Associates.
Okay, you've got the floor.
Excellent. All right. So joining me here tonight, I've got colleague David Clinch and also Laura Ernst from New England Power. So this project that we're presenting to you tonight is essentially a rebuild of an overhead electrical transmission line.
Just before we get going, and I think I've said this previously, is the fact that the company I work for, we do work with Epsilon a lot, but meaning that we're on design teams with Epsilon. At this point, I know of no contractual agreement between company I work for, Niche Engineering, that we're contracted to Epsilon, which is where I would have to recuse myself as a shareholder in Niche Engineering. So I'm just disclosing this to make sure that the applicant has no issue or anyone else has no issue with me, listening to evidence and being part of the public hearing process. Work on same teams. I don't know of any contractual relationships. So I would give that back to you, Simon, to say if you have any issues with it or if your client has any issues.
Don't have any issues. David, if you have any, you can speak up.
No, as one of the principals of Epsilon, we take no issue with that at all. Thank you for
Right.
mentioning it.
Yeah, it's just a disclosure. So thank you. So please, I interrupted you. Please continue.
All right, no problem. So again, this is essentially a rebuild project of an existing overhead electrical transmission line. The project actually runs about 14 miles, starting in Millbury and ending at the Milford Medway town line. Overall, the project is going to be replacing 167 utility towers in the right-of-way. And within Grafton, that spans about 5.7 miles across town, and there are going to be 52 structures in Grafton that are going to be replaced as part of the project. Also, there's going to be replacement of some of the conductor wire and installation of fiber optic cable overhead as well, and also maintenance of some of the existing gravel access roads throughout the right-of-way out there. Just to note, the project does qualify for consideration as a limited project, though we feel we do meet the performance standards for the applicable resource areas. Of the 52 structures that are going to be replaced in Grafton, 26 of them fall within areas that are regulated either under the WPA or the Grafton bylaw. 18 of those qualify as exempt maintenance because they're essentially being changed out with similar size structures. And the remaining 8 structures do require a filing of the NOI here because there is going to be an increase in the footprint due to basically the structure going from what we term a direct embed, which is essentially wooden utility pole embedded directly into the ground, to a structure that will have a concrete foundation that's a little bit larger than currently out there. All of the work that we're proposing is within the utility right-of-way, which also encompasses 3 other transmission lines out there alongside line 323, which is the subject of our project here. So all of the work is going to take place in areas that are either fee-owned by New England Power or within easements that they hold. There are a handful of structures, I think 8 or 9 of them, that fall within areas that are mapped by Natural Heritage as priority habitats of rare species. We have gone through the MESA project checklist process with Natural Heritage, and we received a determination letter from Natural Heritage indicating that the project is not anticipated to result in a take of rare species. That is based on some conditions that they have placed that we worked out together, essentially, that essentially we're limiting the amount of disturbance through the use of construction mats for access and setting up those temporary work pads, and also time of year restriction as far as when we place some of those mats out in certain areas in the right of way. Abutter notifications were conducted in accordance with the Grafton bylaw. As Jen and Leah are aware, and maybe members of the commission as well, subsequent to our initial filing, it was determined that some additional abutter notifications were required. So those went out a couple of weeks ago. and as well as an update to the local form, an additional fee payment, some stormwater bylaw supporting information, and a revised map set with a couple of revisions on there. Those were all provided back on June 26th to the commission. So everything should be up to date at this point. And that, I'll just say the abutter notification did include abutters that are just over the lines in both Sutton and Upton. I'll pause there to see if anybody has any questions before I get into the specifics as far as jurisdictional work that's going to be happening out there.
Thank you for that. Leah, anything else? I'd rather just listen. I will check with the commissioners to see if they have any specific questions up to this point. Jonathan, anything yet?
Nope, no questions.
Amira, anything yet?
No questions yet.
And Noah, any questions yet?
Nothing from me.
Excellent. All right.
Simon, yep, please proceed.
Great. So as I mentioned, the subject of this NOI is really related to structures where there's going to be a slight increase in the footprint of the structures. So the first one on the list, we've got one structure where that is going to occur within BVW. It's structure 482. Leah, if you're driving, your page numbers are slightly different than mine, but I think it ought to be on PDF page 22. If you can jump there. I missed the mark there. So if you could jump up or down a couple of pages. Sorry, it's going to be a few more. Apologies. I did have the page numbers for my PDF set. So there's structure 482. So this structure is currently a direct embedded 3-pole structure. So there are 3 wooden legs to the structure out there. The existing footprint is about 21 square feet. It's going to be replaced with an H-frame type structure. So that'll have 2 legs on 7-foot diameter concrete foundations. So that's a footprint of 77 square feet. The mitigation that we're proposing for the structure here is essentially to remove the existing structure of 21 square feet and restore in situ that footprint. For the remaining 56 square feet of BVW loss that's going to occur from the installation of the new structure. If you can see that little purple polygon that's just to the right edge of the page there, we're proposing about 100 square foot replication area on the edge of this wetland. The notice of intent that we included a planting plan and also a proposed monitoring and reporting schedule associated with the replication for this structure here. And just backing up so that we can kind of identify what we're looking at. In general, when we go through these pages, when you see the kind of green shaded polygon there, the largest part of this map here, that's delineated BVW. You can see the Grafton 25-foot no disturb zone is kind of the red and black dashed line on either side of that. A little bit further out from that, that green line is the 100-foot buffer zone. And within the wetland there, the blue and dark blue dashed lines indicate a couple of intermittent streams that run through that wetland and are carried across our access road via a couple of culverts there that you can see. So anywhere where work is going to occur within BVW and for actually most locations on the right of way, construction mats are going to be used to establish those temporary work pads out there. Those are essentially timbers bolted together. If you haven't seen these before, it's timbers bolted together that each one is about 4 feet wide by 16 feet long. And those are placed in a manner that basically creates a temporary but safe and stable work platform for the equipment that's needed to replace the structures out there. Once the work is completed, those mats are removed and their function is really to, again, provide that safe and stable work platform while also minimizing disturbance to the vegetation underneath, and things typically bounce back pretty quickly once they're removed. I'll also note for this structure, since it's really the one of 2 in BVW that I'm going to be talking about tonight, for the when the new structure, the augering is done for installation of the new structure, the contractor will be required to salvage and segregate the wetland topsoil so that can be used to use for restoration of the existing structure footprint here. think that pretty much covers it for this one here. Any questions before I move along?
Sure, I have a couple quick questions.
Sure.
Just a general one. Obviously, you have a service access already through the wetlands and so forth.
Correct.
Are you going to be doing any improvements to it? Is there going to be any widening or anything else?
Yeah, no, throughout the entire project, wherever there are existing access roads, they will be maintained to essentially keep them in working order. So in some places, that will involve light grading or the addition of gravel within the existing footprint. But within jurisdictional areas here, we're not proposing any widening. So essentially, erosion sedimentation barriers would be placed along the edge of the road before work commences, and there is no proposal to widen them beyond their existing footprint.
And then as far as the culverts that you pointed out at the intermittent streams, are those existing?
Yes.
And what condition are they in?
Functional to the best of my knowledge. I think these ones both here, I don't know the exact size, but they're somewhere around the order, probably like a 12-inch corrugated metal pipe.
And I'm more just interested if they're in poor shape and this is the time to replace them, or if it's not included, that's fine too. then-
It's not part of the plan, but like we can take a note on that.
Okay. Leah, have any other additional questions? Otherwise, I'll just go around to the
Not right
Commissioners.
here, no.
Okay. Jonathan, any other questions?
No questions. Thanks.
Mira, any other questions?
I don't have any other questions.
Okay. And Noah, any questions?
No questions for me.
And that was all that I had. So
Great.
I'm all set.
All right, Leah, I think I've done the math correctly this time. If you can drive us to map sheet 34 or PDF page 34. Yay, okay. So the next one on the list here that I wanted to discuss, structure 495, which appears just at the left, or sorry, the right side of the page here. That structure is going to be, as you can see, the existing structure is the gray dot right there. And the proposed location of the structure is the orange dot there. So that structure is going to be moving, I believe it's around 190 feet or so to the east. The reason that is happening is because we can flip to the next page here. And structure 496 right in the center there, that structure is going to be eliminated. It sits out in the middle of this emergent marsh where the water, the surface water does fluctuate a bit here. And it's definitely tricky to reach. So if there is needs for maintenance or emergency repairs or whatnot, it's a tricky one to get to. So New England Power Engineering has opted to eliminate that structure. But in order to meet the spanning requirements between the structures here, that necessitated 495 being bumped over. So while 495 will be the same type of structure that it is now, which is a wooden H-frame, two wooden poles in the ground, and it will be in the future, it is shifting into the wetlands. The 14 or so square feet of impacts associated with the new structure 495 is going to be offset by the removal and restoration of the footprint of structure 496. And then actually bumping back the direction that we just came from here. Just to note, also structure 494 that you can see on the left side there, that structure is actually going to be moving out of wetlands along with the kind of respanning configuration that's going on there. So two structures on either side of 495 that are going to have wetland restoration associated with them to kind of offset the 14 square feet associated with 495 going in. Any questions on this one?
I have none. Jonathan,
Nope. No questions.
Amira,
None.
Noah.
No questions.
I have one.
Okay. I missed you because last time you said not right now. So now I didn't call on you. Go ahead, no. Go ahead, Leah.
Right here where it says temporary soil stockpile location, is that on a map as well?
Yeah, so the reason why that is shown on the maps at all, essentially, as you can imagine, when the holes are augured for the new structures. There is material that comes out of the ground, and wherever we have a large wetland crossing like this, we want to make sure that there is an option to stockpile that if needed on site. So that's the location that excuse me, it's essentially the only location in this stretch. You can see that we're kind of bordered to the west by that railroad track there. So that's the farthest access. So it's the only location that was really outside of Wetlands Protection Act or bylaw jurisdictional areas. And based on conversations with Jan from her review, yes, she did ask that we place matting there. It didn't originally have it, but yes, it does have matting under there now.
Perfect, thank you.
If we're all set to move to the next one, Leah, I'd ask you to jump to sheet 14. Almost got it there. Let's try 13, please. This one does it enough, and 464 is the structure that is the topic of conversation now. So it's on this sheet and apparently sheet 12 as well. So for this structure, we are in bordering land subject to flooding associated with the Blackstone. We have 3 structures on the project that are in BLSF. So it's this one here, 464, and then a couple that are just a bit to the east that we'll look at in a moment here. That's 468 and 469. So for 464, this is similar to what we saw back in the BVW at 482. It is a direct embedded 3-pole structure currently, and it's going to be replaced again on an H-frame, so 2 legs with 7-foot diameter foundations. So again, currently we've got a footprint of 21 square feet, and that's going to be bumping up to 77 square feet. Just because we'll stick with BVW, and I'll touch on the mitigation proposed. Actually, since we're here, I'll talk about it now. So for the 3 structures that we have in BLSF, one of the performance standards for bordering land subject to flooding is that if there is a loss of flood storage, that needs to be compensated. So essentially, if we are occupying a volume of space that could be occupied by floodwaters, if there is a flood, we need to lower the grades at a corresponding location at the same elevations within the same floodplain area, so that we're basically offsetting that space that we're taking up. So if you see sort of just to the just above 465 there's that blue area. So that is an area where we've had some preliminary survey done to confirm the elevations out there, and they do align with the elevations that are going to be occupied by the foundation for structure 464 as well as 468 and 469. So I'll get into the details as far as the volume that we need to take out of there, but essentially that's just generally the location where we would propose to cut some of the material out of that area, and then would likely place it nearby outside of flood zones, outside of riverfront and buffer zone there. Very likely between those 2 kind of knobs that you can see just to the up and to the right there, which both have towers for other lines on them. But that's essentially the compensation that's required for the flood storage aspect. And also just want to note that 464 is also within riverfront area, so the two resource areas for that structure. So I'll say, in addition to the compensatory flood storage that we're proposing in that location that Leah just pointed out for these 3 structures, we're also proposing to do some pollinator plantings to do some essentially habitat enhancement in the footprints of these pads. So a total of 1,500 square feet for the 3 pads. We propose to essentially spread a native pollinator seed mix in these areas once construction is finished. So that pretty much sums up the work for BLSF. One thing I'll note here, you can see in the middle of the page, we have got the crossing between 464 and 465. That would essentially follow the same route that was used on a very recent project in the corridor here through the wetland there. There is a potential vernal pool mapped in that location. I think this was noted previously by the commission for the other project. Yep. Epsilon visited the site on can't remember if it was 2 or 3 different locations during the spring, but essentially, I think it was 3. We did observe or hear one wood frog chorusing, and then at a later date did observe one wood frog egg mass. Neither of those things are sufficient to certify this as a vernal pool, but just noting that it doesn't appear to provide excellent vernal pool habitat. That is quite shallow, and it appears that it probably does dry up a little bit sooner than would be preferable to the species that would want to be habitating there. But just wanted to note essentially that we're proposing to take the same matted path through that area that has been taken by other recent projects. So Leah, if you wouldn't mind advancing to sheet 15. So here are the 2 other structures that are going to have footprint increases within BLSF. So structure 468 is the same scenario as I just explained over at 464. So it's that three pole structure currently going to an H-frame on 7-foot foundations. And then the 469 is currently a direct embed H-frame, and that's going to be replaced on an H-frame with 8-foot foundations. So slightly larger footprint for that structure there. And that's all been accounted for in our BLSF mitigation. So just to get into that, if you'd like to jump back to 13 so you can see that area, you're welcome to. But to sum it up, the area that we are required to mitigate for, or sorry, the volume that we're required to mitigate for is around, let's see, I've got it all broken up here, but it's around 500 cubic feet, if I'm not mistaken. It's spelled out in the NOI, and I've got all the numbers broken out individually here by elevation as the requirement is, but I can kind of do some rough math here. For 464, it's a little over 100 cubic feet. For 468, it's roughly 140 cubic feet. And for 469, it's close to 200 cubic feet. So that's all, again, accounted for in the NOI narrative, and would be basically all of that comp flood storage would occur back at that location on sheet 13 that Leah showed. Any other questions before I move on to the next location?
Just a quick question when you were talking about the flood zones and so forth. Any velocity zones within close to any of these structures?
464, if you would jump back to 13 there, Leah. 464 is located right near the edge, I believe, of the floodway for the river. I'm not aware of any specific requirements in the WPA regarding that. It's certainly something that New England Power is aware of, and I can say that the structure that is going to be replacing the existing one will be certainly better equipped to withstand velocity than the existing wood structure there.
Right. And again, the only reason I'm asking is more so just a potential impact to the wetlands and so forth, that the structure is designed to be appropriate for the floodway. That's all.
Okay.
And that could be a simple thing that you get from National Grid, design or engineers, just to say it's yes, from a WPA standpoint, specifically that kind of velocity design, you have to do that for FEMA, depending upon what you're doing with them. But for our concern, it's more just to make sure that if you have a structure in a floodway, that it's designed in such a way that it's not likely to fall down.
Okay. So you're requesting confirmation of that from?
Yeah, pretty straightforward. That that the change of the structure type and the fact that it is being built to meet those standards. That's all.
Okay.
It's not like move it or anything like that. It's just simply, is it being designed correctly? That's it.
Just taking a note.
Well, I've done had a crazy day. I'm in a meeting right now, but yeah, I got a disappointment.
All right. Any other questions on these structures in BLSF? If not, I'll jump to, we've got 3 locations in buffer zone.
Jonathan, anything?
No, no question.
Amira,
No questions.
Noah,
No questions.
and Leah.
I'm good, thanks.
All right, if I haven't lost track of my place here, I think sheet 17 ought to take us to the right location. Yes, okay. So structures 470 and 471, a couple more structures that are going to be seeing some slight increases. I will just note here that structure 470 appears to be within BLSF. But looking at the base flood elevation for this location, which I don't have right in front of me, it is below the actual elevation that the structure base is located, based on the survey that National Grid has completed out there, New England Power has completed out there. So that's one that I just want to note there. But as far as the work and buffer zone for these 2 structures, 470 and 471. 470 is currently directed bed H-frame and is going to an H-frame on 7-foot foundations. And 471 is a 3-pole that is going to an H-frame on 7-foot foundations. There's no mitigation required for work in buffer zone. There's none proposed for those, aside from removal of the existing structure and restoration of the existing footprint. Gonna guess that we're gonna go to sheet 36 next, I think, Leah. All right, yeah. So 498 is another one. We're right on the edge of buffer zone here. This is a direct embed 3-pole structure that's going to an H-frame on 7-foot foundation. So all 3 of these buffer zone structures, like the others here, slight increase in footprint. The existing structure is going to be removed and the existing footprint will be restored. This is within an equestrian center here, so whatever we restore is going to get hoof prints all over it real quick. Next sheet, I think, ought to be 30. Let's try 29, please. All right, so this is essentially the only activity that we've got proposed out there that is not a structure replacement itself. So what we're proposing here is a slight realignment of the existing gravel access road. So what we have is the existing road is about a 12-foot wide gravel access road, and it essentially follows the alignment of that black dashed line that you can see kind of running through the center of the pad for 486. Thank you, Leah. The issue is that while it doesn't appear that it's going to be the case because that orange dot seems far away from it, the structure, being an H-frame, has 2 legs. And so the existing road, we observed when we visited the site and saw some of the preliminary staking for structure locations. One of the legs for the proposed structure is right smack in the middle of that existing gravel access road, which would cut off access to a handful of structures to the east of here. So what we're proposing to do is realign the existing access road to that yellow alignment there. It's about 100-foot long stretch. So with a 12-foot wide access road, it's about 1,200 square feet. What we're proposing to do to construct the road is actually to not do any grading or excavation, but rather to just simply place geotextile fabric down, likely place some boulders down on, because it is a slightly off camber, so it's sloping to the south here just a bit. And then build up with just if it's probably a couple of feet of stone that's going to be required beyond those boulders on top of this fabric here that'll give us the access road through. Main reason being, this is one of a few sites throughout the project that has archaeological sensitivity. So we're trying to avoid ground disturbance to the extent that we can here. Surveys have been conducted by New England Power's Cultural Resources representative, so that the new structure location has been cleared. But we are trying to limit, again, our impacts at this location. So that's why we're proposing to simply place stone on the fabric there rather than actually do any ground disturbance of the existing ground surface. I think that pretty much covers what I had to say on this one. And that really wraps up the list of areas where we have impacts that are within jurisdictional areas. So I'll pause for questions or comments here.
I've actually asked all of my questions. Amira, any other questions you'd like to ask?
No other questions or no questions.
All right. Jonathan?
No question.
Noah?
No questions.
Leah, you want to kind of report out on your
Sure.
comments?
So let's see here. Now I have to do the math on the page numbers. Okay, this is a good example. One question I had was just that sometimes work pads have the pink line around them for erosion control around the perimeter, like you can see on this page, but they don't always. And I was wondering what the reason is, why it appears some places and not others, and then if the commission wanted to see that at least in pads near resource areas, for instance.
Sure. The explanation for that is essentially, first I'll say, you know, these looking at these maps, if you've ever seen, you know, this type of map before, a GIS-based map for a large-scale transmission line project like this, it looks all nice and tidy and simple in 2 dimensions there. When you get out in the field, as you can kind of see from the squiggly black lines on here, there are slopes and there's different topography in different locations out here. So, you know, the sites look different when you get out there. So what we've attempted to do here is give our best interpretation of where we think it will make most sense to install perimeter controls around the work zones here. So this location, for example, if you can see that north arrow down in the legend there, kind of near the middle of the page, the top of the page is essentially to the north. So if you're able to see any of those topography contour indicators there, so the towards the bottom of the page, we're at elevation 500. Towards the top of the page, it slopes down to elevation 460. So, you know, over the entire course of the page, bottom to top, it's better than a 40-foot slope. So what we typically, in my experience, the way that I have permitted projects before is to not even put erosion controls on the plans, because it really, in a lot of cases, you got to get out there to see what's actually going to make sense. And over the course of the project, things are going to change and you're going to need to adapt. But I think per the bylaw here, we were asked to you know, depict them on the plans here. So essentially, rather than, you know, fully enclose a square here, because it doesn't necessarily make sense to put a perimeter control up gradient of work, I've tried to place them on the plans here in a reasonable interpretation of where we think they'll actually go, and to do their job. So that's what you're seeing here. That's why 453, because the slope is not only to the north, but you can also see it's sloping to the west there. It's got a little bit more wrapping around it. Whereas 454, it's pretty much just sloping to the north. So we've tried to, you know, use our brains there to take our best guess at where controls will actually be needed. If you were to jump a page or two, I think probably 2 pages forward, so you can see some there. Now the slope is really heading to the east and north, so they're wrapped around kind of the other sides of those pads. And if you continue one more, I think, unless we're going to show access, yeah. So 458, and you can see a bit of 459 there. We're not showing perimeter controls around those at all. The reason being is what those work pads are going to be, how they're going to be constructed, is by placing those timber mats on the ground. And again, the purpose of the timber mat is to really minimize disturbance of the ground. We're not doing any grading or any excavation to place those. They're really placed carefully and built up in a manner that gives us that flat work platform. So because there is no proposed grading or excavation associated with the work pad itself, typically we don't find that there is a need to install erosion controls around them for the most part, because there just really isn't erosion associated with them. In the case of 458 and essentially all of the work pads where we have some overlap with resource areas, BVW or you know, surface waters, whatnot, it's not practicable to place the perimeter controls on top of the mats themselves, the work pad. It actually occupies, you know, space that is needed for work, and is not really practicable to you know, be installing stakes or anything into the wooden mats. So if we were to place them here, they would actually need to go into the BVW themselves. And from my experience, that can have the potential, or most always does, cause more disturbance that it's actually going to prevent. Again, since we're not disturbing the ground with grading or excavation here, we're putting, you know, compost filter tubes or whatever the type of controls might be, on the vegetated surface of the wetland, and it actually results in more impact than there otherwise would be. So that's why we've opted to not show them in the wetland areas and in general around the matted pads.
Okay. As long as you guys are okay with that, I'm okay with that.
So I just have one quick question. Does this fall under, do you need to do a general construction permit under NIPD's?
Yes, absolutely. Yep. So we will be filing for a CGP. That means that we will be developing a stormwater pollution prevention plan for the project. That means we will be required to do minimum weekly inspections of active work areas, and also inspections when there's greater than a quarter-inch rain event. So yes, there will be active monitoring and reporting on the project here. So that's another reason why generally, you know, I won't depict erosion controls on the plans, because typically it never looks like it looks on the plans, and we, you know, we place them in the field as it makes sense, as it's practicable, and adapt as we needed. The other thing to keep in mind is, you know, this is a linear project, so it advances, you know, in stages, and those controls, it's not like we're going to go out and install all of the silt fence or all of the straw wattles or whatever the case is before we start any of the construction. We're going to install it at the sites where we're going to start work, do that work, and then remove from those sites, rather than try to get it all in at once.
So having said that, it also helps us in certain ways, and we don't review any of the NIPD's information, although it would be great to get a copy of it. We'll probably put a condition that you submit the SWIP to us. And the other thing is if you're doing, you know, monthly inspections, we'd like to get a copy of those inspections, and we just want it to see what's happening, where are you, and what kind of erosion control that you're putting down. Then it just gives us a way of checking with that without having to have everything on a plan at this point, and understanding that it's a linear and you're going to be moving the whole time. So
Right. Understood.
Okay. I have a couple other questions.
go for it.
I think. Nope, hang on. Okay, I think this is, if I have the right orientation here. So Hassanemet Woods, one of our conservation lands. This is the easement of sorts between Hassanemet Woods and the Grafton Land Trust property. Folks access Hassanemet Woods off the end of Salisbury Street. You could walk straight down this corridor if you wanted to. Our loop trail, you know, happens down around here. So I just had a couple questions pertaining to that conservation land. One is that, and you touched on this earlier with archaeological stuff. There's a CR and also the historical preservation restriction on Hassanemet Woods. So have you guys been in communication with DCR and the Historical Commission for this work?
So on the DCR piece, I think you're talking about the conservation restriction there. So we did, Jan mentioned that in her administrative review of the NOI, and we checked in with New England Power Company's legal department, and they confirmed with us that the easements through this area actually predate the adoption of the CR for the property. And essentially the CR recognizes the easement rights for New England Power. So they do have rights to conduct this type of work. So I think that covers that piece of it. On the cultural resources archaeological side, yes, certainly Gray and Pape is New England Power Company's cultural resources specialist for the project. And so they were the ones that were actually doing the physical field surveys and testing out in the field. They developed an archaeological site avoidance and protection plan, which was part of our submittal for our Army Corps permit, but it was also submitted to, reviewed by and approved by Mass Historic Commission. So yes, in both instances there, the answer to your question is yes, we have checked those boxes.
Okay, awesome. And you guys don't need any access down this corridor, right?
No, correct. We're gonna be staying in right away, staying on the easement. You can see the gravel access road that leads in from, I forget the name of the street.
Yep.
Salisbury.
And then, right, Salisbury. And then would it be helpful at all if we put out any kind of messaging in our trailhead kiosk or our webpage for the property about, if you guys need a trail closed or something like that, or you want to give the public any heads up? I'm happy to coordinate that if you find it helpful.
Thank you. Appreciate that. The project, just so you're aware, the project is scheduled to start construction in early 2026. So we've got a little bit of time before things kick off here. Likely, it would be a very good idea to put some sort of notice out there. But what I'll say is New England Power has a whole team of outreach specialists that will be in touch with each community where the project is going to be taking place to talk about this type of thing here. But I'll take down this note just to make sure that we pass that along to them. And they, wherever there is recreation land that crosses the site, they're keeping that in mind. And I think we'll be in touch on their own. But I'll take this note to make sure that they do coordinate with you as needed. I'll also say that having recreational trails cross projects like that is a pretty common occurrence. And there are a number of ways that it can be addressed. Sometimes putting up some protective fencing that kind of guide hikers into a specific route that we would like them to follow around certain parts of the work can be done. Definitely signage will be placed where there are trails just to make folks aware that there's active construction going on. But I think ultimately all of these things are going to be further fleshed out as we get closer to the project and through New England Power's outreach team.
Okay. And the last couple questions I have were actually from an abutter that stopped by the office today. They aren't exactly within the commission's jurisdiction, but if you'll indulge me for a second, I told him I'd try to get him some answers.
Sure thing.
He was curious if there's a voltage change as a result of this.
No, there will not be.
And any height changes to the structures.
I'm not 100% sure about that. I think in general they'll be similar to where they're at right now.
Okay. And are you adding lines?
No, there's not going to be any new lines. In this part of the project, essentially what they're going to see out there is existing wooden poles being replaced with steel poles. As far as wires, everything is going to look essentially the same as it does out there now.
Okay. Thank you. That's all my questions.
All right. Anything else to add? Otherwise, I'll go around the commission to see if anyone else has any further questions. If you have nothing else. So, Amira, any other questions? A lot of information here.
Yeah, I don't have any questions right now.
Sure. Jonathan
No questions.
and Noah.
No questions for me.
So, Leah, as far as kind of your comments and so forth, I was just kind of going through these. So there are a couple waivers we need to go through. Before we get into that level of detail, let's open it up to the public. If anyone is on online and have any questions or comments about this particular notice of intent, please raise your hand. We'll be happy to call on you and answer or let you have any comments that you may have. While we wait for that, we'll go on a few of the other things that we need to kind of take care of. So, Leah, so there's a couple waivers that are required for this.
Yep. They have one under the wetlands bylaw regulations for the unavoidable disturbance to the no disturb zone, and they have one under our stormwater bylaw regulations for providing an operation and maintenance plan.
Understandable. Go around the commission to see if anyone has questions on these two waivers. Jonathan?
I think it's maybe the first time I don't know if I've seen those in my time here. There's a couple of typical waivers, sorry, that we see regularly, but I don't know if we've seen those, and maybe it's just because of the use of the project. But Sandy, I don't know if you have any light on that. I don't know if these are
So
typical, I've missed them in the past, or if it's more based around the use.
So I think it's a little bit of both. So disturbance to the no disturbance, that's usually, a driveway or something crossing or whatever. In this case here, so the no disturbance areas under our bylaws, they're going to be all over that. So they're requesting a waiver for that. Pretty straightforward. I don't think I've seen a request for a waiver from stormwater regs for an O&M plan. I don't really have a big problem from that because this is, a utility easement. There really isn't any stormwater as far as like structures or bioretentions or any other kind of stormwater features that would require O&M. I mean, the whole
Right.
idea is that they're going to basically put back the wetlands, do the compensation, revegetate it, not really changing the access road. So, and there's no drainage on the access road. It's not pavement. It's, a dirt road, gravel road. Yeah. So I understand the request for the waiver because our bylaw requires it. I also kind of go like, I don't even know what the O&M plan would mean.
Yeah, that definitely have a similar thought there. So
Yeah.
it doesn't seem like a big request, but it doesn't seem like there's anything to do an O&M for. So those are
Right.
my only comments. But other than that, they seem like pretty straightforward waivers.
Yep. Sounds good. Mira, do you have any questions on the waivers?
No questions.
Okay. Noah, do you have any questions? And feel free, O&M is an operation and maintenance plan, which is typically, provided for when you're doing, like, say you're doing a new building with a parking lot that has structures, they need to do an O&M plan for maintenance of that drainage / stormwater system. This is a little bit different. So do you have any questions?
Well, that cleared up my questions. But no, other than that, I'm good.
Okay, not a problem. Yeah, obviously, I can't think of what you would put in an O&M plan for stormwater for a linear site like this. So I don't have any issues with that. So next thing that we need to do, so these are under the bylaw, so they're requesting a waiver. So whenever someone requests a waiver under the bylaw, we have to make a motion. We have to vote on it, and when we vote on it, we're voting to grant it, or you can vote against it. It's every commission member has the right to kind of vote for whatever reason or you have. So having said that, so Leah, can we do both at the same time or should we do them separately?
We couldn't hear you, Leah, or at least I couldn't hear you.
Yeah, I didn't hear it.
I just said go for it. You can do them together.
Okay. So the first thing I will ask for is a motion to request the two waivers for this project.
So I'll make a motion to grant the waivers for the wetlands bylaw regulations for unavoidable disturbance to no disturb and stormwater regulations for an O&M plan for the transmission line 323 project.
All right. And do I have a second?
I will second that motion.
So we have a motion and a second. We'll do a roll call vote. Mara, you're up on the screen again, so you get to go first.
Yes.
Jonathan,
Yes.
Noah,
Yes.
I am also a yes. Both of those waivers, and both of those motions are carried. So all set with the waivers. Next thing, Leah, should we review the findings and just let people know what's going on with that?
Sure. So I have 3 suggested findings. One is that it's a limited project per 310 CMR 10.533D, which is for maintenance of overhead utilities. Second one is that additional work is to occur as part of this project under the utility maintenance exemption at 310 CMR 10.02 2B2H. And the third finding is just listing out the impacts, which is 77 square feet of BVW with 121 square feet of replacement, 210 square feet of BLSF with 56 square feet restored and 1,000 square feet enhanced. And in terms of volume, that's 510 cubic feet lost but replaced, as well as 77 square feet in the outer riparian of the Blackstone River.
Okay. And just as an FYI, these findings are placed in the order of conditions just to make sure that, especially with the limited project and so forth, that everything is noted as far as what's in the regulations and so forth. As far as special conditions, if you want to go through those, Leah.
Sure. I think I landed on a total of 4 after our discussion this evening.
Yeah.
The first is a copy of the SWIP and all subsequent inspection reports. Second would be the statement confirming that the applicable structures will meet floodway standards or safety within the floodway.
Yeah, structure standards, structure design or whatever. Yeah.
Third is per NHESP in order to avoid a take. All turtle avoidance measures as submitted with the filing must be implemented as proposed. If the proposed avoidance measures cannot be accomplished as described, the applicant must contact NHESP for further guidance. And number 4, temporary matting shall be removed upon completion and stabilization. Resource areas shall be restored upon completion and reseeded if natural growth hasn't occurred after 1 growing season.
All right, thanks. So, any questions on these special conditions? Thanks for picking up the NIPDs and so forth. So I'll go around and ask if there's any questions or if anyone else has any thoughts of any other special conditions. Jonathan.
No, sounds pretty straightforward. I don't have any questions and seems like reasonable condition.
All right, thank you. Amira.
No, that all sounds good to me.
Okay, and Noah. And just as an FYI, Noah, NHESP is Natural Heritage Endangered Species Program. So we're talking about endangered species.
Cool. No, those sound like reasonable conditions to me.
All right, great. Having said that, that's kind of just kind of going through any other recommendations, Leah, or anything else that we haven't discussed yet.
I don't have anything, but I'm just going to note now that there's nobody from the public either.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question, so thank you on that. So based on that, I'll go back to the applicant. If you have any other questions on the special conditions or any of the findings, please let us know.
I think they're all pretty straightforward. Thank you very much.
Okay, so based on the discussion today and the information submitted, we'll do a motion to basically issue close the public hearing, issue an order of conditions. So for Noah, again, if you don't feel comfortable voting for this, as this is your first meeting, please abstain if you want to. Otherwise, if you've got a good handle on what's going on, you can certainly vote yay or nay to it once we get to it. And the way this will go is that we'll make a motion, have a second, and then we'll do a roll call vote. So as far as so the waivers have been granted, so we're looking to close the hearing, issue order of conditions. So do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion to close the hearing and issue the order of conditions for the transmission line 323 project with all of the special conditions as discussed in this meeting.
Very good. Amira, second.
I second that motion.
Thank you. So we'll do a roll call vote. Since you're again on the screen, Amira, you get to go first.
Yes.
Jonathan,
Yes.
Noah,
I'll abstain.
that's not a problem. And I am also a yes, the motion carries.
Great.
So good luck. And I'm sure we'll see you at some point in the future.
Thanks very much, Jess. We'll be in touch. Appreciate it.
All right.
Have a good night.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
All right, Leah. We got one more continuance.
Correct.
Okay, so this continuance, so Noah, on this one here, the one that I'm going to open up in just a minute. You cannot participate in this because you weren't on the commission when we started this. So there's actually a process. If you miss a hearing, you can listen to the video, but because you weren't on the commission itself, you're not going to be able to vote on this one. So obviously that's correct, Leah, right?
That is correct.
So you can listen to it if you have, questions, so forth, but you're not going to be a voting or participating member on this one here. So, all right.
Andy, is this a continuance or what? I didn't see it I was looking at the report and I didn't see another continuance because we hit the first one. Are we talking about the partial COC or something else?
No, this is the 55 Weston Street.
Oh, okay. Oh, I'm sorry. Got it. I'm with you now.
Yep, not a problem. I was kind of checking the agenda at the beginning to make sure I had what was a continuance, what wasn't. So, all right. So I need to go back to here. All right. So for this continuance, pursuant to the Massachusetts Wetlands Protection Act and the Grafton Wetlands Protection Bylaw, the Conservation Commission will hold a public hearing to act upon a notice of intent application for Grafton Wetlands Bylaw permit for the construction of an addition, above ground pool, and driveway expansion at 55 Weston Street. Who's here to lead that discussion?
Good evening. This is Norman Hill from Land Planning. Can you all hear me?
Yes, we can.
Good evening to you all. Thanks for being here. So we've made a few changes to the plan since we were last here. We have the proposed driveway expansion would be done out of paver blocks, which would rest on a bed of stone. And we've added, so that would be, so whenever it would rain, any water that hit that surface would leach into the ground. Also, there's an existing gutter line that cuts through there and dumps one of the gutters out somewhere out back. We're going to disconnect that and have that empty into that stone base that's under that porous pavement. We also had moved that pavement so that it's more than 2 feet away from the boulders that are there. There are existing boulders. This was a notice of intent that was filed and submitted and certified and released years ago, but the boulders are still there. They haven't been moved. Client's not proposing to cut down any trees. He's not proposing to enlarge his lawn area, but he is proposing to build a garage and a pool in the area that's currently lawn. We did have that staked so that people could go out and walk that and see. And that's about it. We are calling that all gutters will be piped to the infiltration. There's 2 storm techs that are going to go in, other than the one downspout that's back left of the house that's going to go under the driveway. The others will all go to the 2 new storm techs to be installed. So right now, when it rains, the water just runs off this site. If you were to allow this project, when it rains, the water will all go underground. So I'll be happy to answer any questions anyone has.
All right, thank you. I'm just kind of looking at what are the type of pavers that you're putting in there? And what's the system?
So we're talking about concrete blocks, about 3 inches thick. And then the sand goes in between the blocks. And then you can see the cross section there. There's 4 inch under the blocks is 4 inch of Number 57 stone, and below that, there's 6 inches of number 2 stone.
Okay.
And then there's fabric below that.
So again, so this is a Unilock system, and I'm just curious, do you know what the infiltration rate is for this system? So this is the only infiltration that happens is and it's actually typically usually an engineered fill in between the blocks, and it's not usually just a number 8 aggregate. So, but I'm just looking to, I understand that it's a porous system. The blocks themselves are not permeable. It's the um, actual fill in between the two of the
Correct.
blocks. So that's fine. It's pretty standard stuff. They all
Right.
have different levels of infiltration. And again, the only thing that I'd be looking for is that it approximates what it would be for a lawn. You know,
Correct.
so. So I'm just curious if you looked at that as far as, yeah, most of these systems have kind of gives you kind of equates what type of soil and stuff that it equates to. So that would be my only question. This seems fairly standard as far as the approach. It's just making sure that everything's constructed according to that detail.
Yes.
Okay. That was kind of one of the things on your plan is that at the existing driveway at the very end, there's some stone where it's not shown on this plan, but there's stone where the trash bins are and so forth. Right in that area. It's not shown on the plans, and then we had discussed a little bit at the first hearing whether that stone would be continued along the back edge of the existing driveway, just so that it intercepts what's coming off the pavement into a stone trench before it goes into the buffer, then the no disturb, and then the wetlands. So that was discussed at the last one. That's kind of the only thing I'm seeing right off of just looking at this. I have no issue with putting the stone underneath the porous paver system and using that and putting in the roof drains into that. We did have some questions about, how the way the roof line was going to be done for the garage, just to make sure that that runoff gets into there. I think that's really the only questions I had. So let me go around to the commissioners to see if anyone has any other questions. Jonathan, any other questions?
Last time we talked about the pool, and the drainage of the pool, just based on the location of it, also being able to be dumped into the storm techs if they were going to drain the pool, for maintenance or for whatever they need to do for it. But is that something that's factored in where that's possible to drain the pool into that storm tech where all that roof drainage is going? Is that copacetic with, I don't know if that's copacetic with code or if that's just something that they can decide to do, but I think that was something that we brought up last time, and looking at some of the notes, I know that's something that was on there as well, but we talked about it briefly. How is that being addressed, to drain the pool for maintenance or for whatever use?
So there's a pipe to be buried from the pool backflush filter to the storm tech. So if they were back flushing the pool, and he hasn't decided exactly which pool he's going to buy yet, so it might be saltwater pool with a filter, but he might be back flushing. If he does back flush it, it would have to go into that storm tech. But he would not be able to empty the whole pool into that unless he did over a several-day period.
I think that the question from last time was derived from, okay, that pool needs to be relined or something needs to be, I don't know, it says above ground deck, pool end deck. So if it's however many gallons of water and you have to completely empty that pool, we I don't necessarily, I think the reasoning and the discussion that we had last time was we didn't want to just dump that into the lawn, into the wetlands without it getting treated, or at least, that was part of the concern from prior. So I think I understand the concept, like you can't, the design of the storm tech is meant for storms and whatnot, but it just, I don't know how that's factored into if the pool needs to be drained just a little bit to clean it or whatever you're doing, backwash it, probably can handle it, but I just don't know what the plan would be if you completely need to drain the pool. That was the comments from last time, was how to,
I know that the pool companies have a water tank truck that can deliver water. Hopefully they have an empty tank truck that they could pump the water out of the pool, and maybe you could put that as a condition that if and when the pool is ever decided to be emptied for maintenance or removal, that the water be pumped into a truck and trucked away.
yeah, or if it is a controlled fashion into that storm tech, then, you drain it slowly if you're going to truly remove that pool. I'm just thinking through the long-term use of this, and, want to make sure it's not impacting the wetlands that are surrounding it. So,
Yeah, Maverick homeowner here too. Yeah, we would drain it into the storm tech, or as Norm said, figure some other thing out. So if that would be fine with a condition to that effect.
Yeah, and Jonathan, I agree with you that, that condition should just kind of start with saying that the pool cannot be just emptied into the lawn and into the wetlands and so forth.
Right.
So and then, then it's up to the homeowner to figure out what the best course of action is if sometime in the future, for some reason, has to get pumped out.
Right.
So,
agree.
okay. Anything else?
Kind of the same comment on the pavers. The paver itself is not permeable. It's not like it's a grass paver or something. It's got aggregate or some type of material between the jointing of the pavers. They're shown as, on this plan diagrammatically, as large blocks, but based on, I think when you've scrolled up, are these actually small individual like bricks, or are they large pavers?
They're-
They look like bricks.
Yeah, they usually are. Usually they're like 4x8 or something in that size range, 3x6. You can get them a little bit larger. They come in all different sizes. The key is that, basically, for lack of a better term, the grout that you use in between them is typically an engineered sand that that doesn't clog and so forth, and allows for the water to flow through it. And as one example, one system that I used it had, I forget the infiltration rate. It was pretty high. The whole idea was that we were trying to make sure that that system would kind of equate to a good lawn on like A soils, like that, something that drains well, that doesn't build up. And that's the whole idea of having all that stone underneath it. So if you have 12 inches of stone at, let's just say it's a 25% void ratio with the different sizes and stuff. So you have it, whatever the rain falls on it, you have 4 inches a depth that can go into that system. Now this one's picking up the roof and other things, but there's some volume there. So this approach, because it has all of the new driveway area, it has stone underneath it. I don't know, Norm, what the actual volume of that area is for the volume of.
Put a little calculation on the side of the drawing that
Okay.
shows that under that driveway, there's about 87 cubic feet of storage.
Okay. Okay, so yeah, you have like you've got yeah. So you went through just to make sure that you can get your inch of water in there.
Yes.
Okay. So there's actually a calculation right on the side, which is,
Yeah, I can see.
yeah,
Yeah.
which is, and again, we're not, this is to provide, additional stormwater and additional kind of water quality approach, so that's why, this is the reason why we would amend the continuing order that says no more development, but this is being done to offset the impact of that development. i.e.
Understood.
the pool and the garage.
Leah, could you scroll down just a little bit so we could see the corner of the house where the pavers are? So, Mr. Burke, I think you mentioned in one of the prior meetings, there's a downspout on that, I guess, west corner, plan west corner of the house. And I think that the comment was that that downspout ties into something and then may or may not go out into the wetland, or is that going to be repiped over to the storm tech on the other side? As like, are you going to intercept that downspout or reroute the gutters, or how is that going to be dealt with on that corner? You know, you're taking all that space up to put
Yeah,
in those pavers.
Yeah, if you look at our plan, you can see 3 dashes. So that existing 4-inch pipe would be cut right there. It would have to exit into this stone that's under these paver blocks.
Oh, so that's what you were saying, Sandy, that this is gonna pick up I missed that. I thought we were
Yep.
extending all the roof drainage to the storm tech.
No,
So this is not just picking up rainwater, but it's also picking up flow off the roof from the gutter downspout
That one
into the.
downspout. Yes, that one downspout, yeah.
Okay.
so that's if that is, piped directly to the wetlands now, obviously it's being introduced into a system that potentially can infiltrate, if nothing
Correct.
else, detain
Yeah.
and clean before it flows through it.
And to confirm, I believe it currently routes directly into the wetland.
Okay, so and again, that's kind of
It's an improvement.
yeah, that's the improvement and stuff, so.
Okay. No, I don't have any other questions. Thank you. Appreciate the
Okay.
help.
Sure. So Amara, do you have any questions?
I do. So these permeable pavers, over time, do weeds and plants tend to grow in between them?
They do. I have them on my driveway, and there's a lot of weeds in between. It's a pain in the neck trying to get them out, too.
Yeah. So the reason I ask is because one of the original conditions was that no fertilizers, herbicides, or pesticides be used within the wetland buffer. So I just wanted to make sure that that would still be the case. And so with these pavers, if things are growing in between them, no herbicides would be used to remove those.
So this
Yeah.
would still be outside the buffer, and I think that condition allows for organic pesticides, if I recall correctly.
I would not recommend pesticides. I don't use pesticides. You just breathe it in, you're going to end up with some awful disease. I would not just put a nail on a board and just drag it through the crack, and all the weeds come out. It's a little effort, but that's the way you got to do it.
Yeah. And I was talking about herbicides. I mean, I think pesticides might be used, I guess, in this spot, but I was specifically talking about herbicides.
Yeah.
They're not good for you.
So, yeah, so there's different, I guess we can check what the original order said, just to what you were saying, Amira, is just, we want to make sure that is continued, whatever that requirement is. So it depends upon the system, how it's put in, and if you put a weed barrier in, but you're going to get a couple grasses, but typically, the system that I have, it's not too bad. I bend over and I pick out a couple slices of grass every once in a while. So, anything else, Amira?
I don't have any other questions.
That's great. I think the only thing that I had was the previous time we just talked about that crushed stone, kind of expanding it on the previous. Oh, thank you, Leah. What does that say? Fertilizers allowed
Matting is off, but it says no fertilizers, herbicides, or pesticides are allowed within the buffer zone.
Yeah, and that's that's not just the wetlands, but it's the 100-foot buffer zone. So, and that's not going to change, and we're not changing that. But yeah,
I do have a question. So if this is granted, does this mean that the ongoing conservation restriction is removed? And so if further development was, planned down the line, it would be kind of outside of our jurisdiction?
No, so pretty much this, from the way I look at it, what we're doing is specifically amending that no further disturbance be done. And so what we would do is once we, approve this, we would amend that order so that there's not going to be any room left to do more, disturbance, but we'll just kind of add a similar type of condition to it. So it's really kind of the whole purpose of this is actually updating and revising that. It's not meant to just get rid of it. That's my opinion. That it's an amendment to it, not that. And the amendment is we're granting it, and the finding is that the only reason we're granting it is because of the infiltration storm techs. It's because of the pervious pavement system. It's because of just taking the roof leader that was originally going straight to the wetlands to go into the stone underneath the pavers. And the only other thing that wasn't shown on here was would be a stone strip along the back of the existing driveway, right where it's very similar to what was done for the near the trash, because you said you had an issue in that location. So to me, those are the things that we talked about last time. And this is kind of reflecting that. But I don't think we should automatically get rid of the no more disturbance. I think it'll just be that condition will be updated and language changed a little bit on it. That's it.
Yeah, and we agree to that.
Yeah. So Leah, is that correct?
I mean, this is definitely a first, but we are gonna have to recraft the wording from
Yep.
the old order.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so that we capture it going forward.
Yeah. And I think the other key thing is we have to do findings
Right.
to say why this is unique and why we allowed this was because of, the whatever you want to call it, enhanced stormwater, and those type of things that that was placed in of picking up downspouts from the existing and routing it through the stone underneath the porous pavement system, getting the other side and having that going into the storm trap systems. Um, all of those things kind of build up to say that it reduces the impacts of the proposed, impervious area being added. That's the only reason why we would be allowing this. So that to me is key to this. So if they weren't going to do all of these type of enhancements, then I wouldn't be, in favor of doing it. And that's the finding, and that's the reason why we would allow this. So
I did want to add that I do still feel that, looking at the previous public hearings, it sounds like the Conservation Commission agreed to allow the waiver only due to the timing of the lot creation and when that bylaw regulation was amended. And, the homeowner did say that he was aware of the restriction when he purchased the property. So I do still feel like that original waiver being granted was a reasonable accommodation. And I do still think we should uphold the conservation restriction on the property. I do appreciate like all of the accommodations that have been made. I just feel like, they're pretty explicit. It's mentioned several times throughout their previous meeting notes.
and from my perspective, vote how you feel. Vote there is nothing that says we all have to agree. That's the bottom line.
Yep.
And having the dialogue and going back and forth is what's key. And again, it's a judgment call. So that's kind of, vote for your, what you feel and what you think should happen. So don't worry about that. That's kind of my take on it. Okay. Anyone?
I had an additional question too. Although Travis is not here, I know he mentioned it, and I'm just recalling the conversation from the last meeting that we had, or I don't know if it was the meeting before that or what, but there's a propane tank out there too, correct? Is that getting moved? That was in the buffer. Is that out of the driveway footprint? What's the story with the propane tank, and is that related to this project and it being along that buffer?
So we've decided not to relocate it. I just think you do a lot of digging and expense and all right with, it's right on the edge of the, just outside the 25-foot no disturb. I'd rather just leave it right where it is. And
Is it underneath the new driveway?
no, it's just out onto the lawn, just beyond that.
Okay. And to be honest, I don't know a whole lot about propane as far as, the tank itself. I'm sure it's double walled and a few different things, but, I don't know a whole lot about it actually.
We may move it. We propose not to move it here because we're not entirely sure, but it's going to have to be close to the buffer one way or the other, whether it's on that side or the other. So that's why we decided not to propose moving it, because as Norm said, there'd be extra cost, and if we don't have to eventually, we'd rather not. But it may end up having to be moved anyways, just due to other construction requirements.
Yeah, it's about 5 feet beyond where those paver blocks would be, about 5 feet away.
So I don't know, Jonathan, that doesn't give you a whole lot of, I just don't know,
Well,
I don't
my
know.
concern.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, Sandy, go ahead.
No, I just don't know. I don't know if like kind of, as far as propane go, having leak, it's a gas under pressure. It's not gonna like seep down into the wetlands. I don't know that much about it. I think,
Isn't it a liquid when it's in the tank? And then they
Yes.
regulate and put it into a gas? I mean, I
Yeah.
don't know a lot about propane except I've got a grill. So I just know that I believe it's a liquid when it's in there, and I don't know if it turns into a gas when it has
Right.
oxygen or regulator,
Right.
but you've also now got a driveway that's 5 feet away, and if you're snow blowing, plowing, whatever you're doing, is that going to get hit and then leak into the wetlands? Like, is there a concern there that not a safety concern as much as I'm obviously there could be, but I'm more concerned about now you've previously was out in the middle of the backyard. Now it's right up against that driveway within 5 feet of the driveway, and you're going to be moving cars in and out of that. You may be moving equipment to get around the house on that tight corner. So
I mean, I guess the way I look at that is we don't regulate the location of propane tanks. And if it's too
it's just
close
that
to
it's
it,
immediately adjacent to the wetland,
yeah,
and it's a chemical that we do not want in the wetland, right?
right.
So
And that's just it. I don't think it leaks the
right,
way like liquid leaks. Like if it was a gas
like a
tank,
diesel or something.
oh yeah,
Sure.
if it was oil or gas, that's different being propane. Um, I'm sure there's a whole set of regulations on where propane tanks can be placed. I've never really seen one be placed close to, again, it's 25 feet off the wetlands, but
Agreed.
but again, I don't know enough about that. I mean, to be quite honest, to me, that's a different regulation that you would have to have.
No, I understand. I'm just more concerned about a
Yeah, no,
fuel
I get,
source
yeah, no,
adjacent to the
yeah,
wetlands. Like, I'm not going to normally on a job site when I see them, they're surrounded by bollards and there's all sorts of other things around them, I'm not going down that route as much as there's a concern of in my mind, and I think this was I won't speak for Travis, but I know he brought it up as the location and the proximity and whatnot, and I echo that of there could be a concern there, but it may not be in our purview. Especially if it's an existing condition that remains, but
yeah. I think one thing that we could kind of do is just to make sure that, the homeowner checks with the building department to make sure there's no issues with the location of that propane tank. I'm sure there are setbacks to your building. I just don't know of any, I don't know enough about it.
me neither. Agree.
Yeah.
I just wanted to flag the concern. I remember talking about it last time. So
Yeah. And that's kind of, and again, just to the applicant, to Matt, how old is that propane tank?
I believe it's with the original house, 2015, so 10 years old.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. The only other thing is that if it does leak, you'll know very quickly because it's got the rotten egg smell.
Yeah, I mean, the tank itself is owned and maintained by DeLeo Propane, who actually
Yep.
happen to be the former owners of the home. Yeah, so they regularly check it when they fill it up.
Yeah. I mean, it's they're your contractor doing that, so your
Correct.
service provider. So yeah, I mean, it's a good question, Jonathan. I just don't know enough about it, and I've never seen us to kind of call out the location of a propane tank.
Yeah,
So,
like I said, I if it was not immediately adjacent to the property line and the new work and the 25 feet to the wetlands, that's why the only reason I'm flagging it is the location.
Yep.
So,
Okay.
No, I don't think I have any other questions.
Okay, so what I would like to do right now is open up to the public if anyone is online that has any questions or comments about this particular project. If you want to raise your hand, we will call on you. Otherwise, we'll kind of go to the next steps of, you know, thinking about making a motion for so that the owner can find out which way the vote goes. Leah, is there anything else that we need to talk about or address? I mean, I think we talked a little bit about conditions.
I guess it depends which way the vote goes, but crafting findings, and which I did
Yeah,
jot down some notes as you were talking earlier, and then just how to reword or what to do with the prior
yeah,
prohibition on the lot.
yeah. I think it would definitely be just kind of to acknowledge that it was revised on a certain date, and then to see the findings of the order of conditions, and then to reinstate that any further disturbance and be a little bit more explicit in the language.
So Sandy, just to be clear, what you're kind of discussing right there is that if this were to, this vote to move forward here or whatever, the the potential here is the reason to deviate from the previous language potentially is because of the enhancements made to the site to handle
Correct.
the additional work. But let's say Mr. Burke wants to come back and put a shed somewhere on this property or down the road. What does that mean? Is this just another thing where he's putting in another storm tap? I'm not. I know that's a hypothetical. I know we're not going to dance too far in that direction. I'm saying, like, what's the stopgap after this? I know there's not a lot of space on the site, but let's say they want to build a garage or they want to do something else on this job on the site. Is that going to be upheld at that point, or are we going to continue? Like, I feel like it could. I echo some of what Amir is saying here. It's a slippery slope, depending on this. First time I've seen this in 5 years, and I don't
Right.
know if you've seen things like this before, Sandy, but I have.
Not like this, but so to me, it's just like any kind of condition or any type of, when you do your orders and you do your continuing orders, there's always a process that you can go and ask to get relief from it. Whether you get relief from it or not, that's up to the people who are on the commission at that time.
Okay.
So for me, that's what we're doing is we're setting it up to say that these are the reasons why we said to the first one, if this gets approved, these are the reasons why we're amending it, and give folks in 10 years or whatever it is, if it's a different set of people, it's really well documented on the process, and that the hearing is available, and that, whatever the vote is, the vote was, so that people can understand it. It's not everything has to be unanimous. Not everything, it's
Got
voting
it,
the
yeah.
way, yeah, yeah. So to me, it's what I want to do is set up as much as I can through what Leah is going to help with is kind of some of the wordsmithing, just so that anytime in the future, if the current owner or some future owner wants to do whatever, I don't know, wants to put a big monument in the backyard, I don't care. Doesn't matter what it is, and they come in, then whoever's on the commission at that point has a history, actually can make a decision, and whether they uphold it or not, life changes and situations change. But it's, you know, I guess I'm not saying that something like that has to be forever. It's
Sure.
just, but it should be done in a thoughtful way. So,
No, I appreciate that. I'm also thinking of how many conditions like this are there in Grafton where, you know, that they might, I mean, is this going to open, I wouldn't say a floodgate, but is this
No.
going to open a situation where people are going to say, now I can go do this or something, you know?
and
How many times we've used this, you know, and again, this wasn't us or whatever, but the prior staff and you know, that there will be no further development on this lot. The condition is ongoing and will not expire. So I just don't know how many places this is gonna
and
pop up.
there's definitely some of them. And to be honest, if someone comes back in and wants to do something and is willing to
Do.
provide a bunch of enhancements or something, then it's a debate and it's a conversation with the commission that's in place at that time. But to
Mhm.
totally shut down any potential um, option there, I think is not always what that's meant. It's meant to not just to keep adding more stuff
Right.
without having to do something. I guess that's the way I look at it. And someone 5 years or 10 years down the road may have a very different opinion than I do. And that's fine too, you know?
Understood. No,
Yeah.
that makes sense. I appreciate the clarity. Thank you.
Yeah.
If I may, my expectation was always that you would amend the existing order and you would, as Norm said, add language that is clearer that it's not just development, it's disturbance. Because I think
Yeah.
that distinction, from my perspective, is quite critical. Development to me is very different than disturbance. So obviously, if you're saying no further disturbance, and as Sandy said, you could always ask to amend it later. Who knows what 20 years brings, but
Yeah.
we're quite happy to accept that. That term. This is what we're looking to do. We don't really have the land to do anything else in the future, and we're willing to say no further disturbance
Right.
in order to do this work.
Yeah. And my concern is that anyone, you know, in 15 years or 20 years when Amara's the chair of the commission and so forth, she has all the information to do whatever she feels should be done. Those are the type of things is that yeah. So anyone, Leah, from the public?
I just have one question.
Absolutely.
So we've talked about updating or like being more specific in the verbiage. Um, in what way?
So before it indicated development as opposed to disturbance. Disturbance is much broader. And, you know, you could say you can't put a garden out there. I mean, that's how broad it is. But when you say development, depending upon what definition, and the problem is development isn't defined in the Wetlands Protection Act. So it's one of those things where, you know, people will interpret differently. So to me, it's being a little bit more, um, being tighter on the language so that, you know, understanding that disturbance is alteration of any of the land. So,
Thank you.
yep. No, nope. Okay. So having seen that, Leah, anything else? Or should we just take a vote? Because that's really what's really going to come down to.
From the public, and I don't have anything else.
You don't have anything else? Nothing from the public?
Can I ask a process question? Are you
Sure.
closing the hearing to take the vote, or are you taking an informal vote first? I just want to understand what next steps.
So typically what we would do is to make a motion to close a hearing and take the vote.
Okay.
So yeah, that
Okay.
would be the typical thing. And then based on that, it's either goes to an order of conditions or it's denied.
And if it's denied, what are the options after that? There's an appeal, right? Can we
No,
appeal here?
yeah. So let's kind of go through that because that's a really important question. So as far as the state Wetlands Protection Act, you would have a process through DEP to go through a judiciary hearing. You can appeal it through them. This is based mainly on, Leah, tell me if I'm wrong. This is based mainly on our local bylaw, correct?
The particulars of this lot.
Yes.
Yeah, and under our bylaw, our appeal period, like DEP's is like 10 days, ours is like 60, I think.
Yep.
Uh,
That's a typical bylaw type of, yes.
and
It's either
doesn't go
45 or 60.
and goes through court, not
Yeah.
DEP.
Right. So the key thing is when you appeal a local bylaw, unless there's some sort of process within the bylaw, it says you typically have to appeal it to Superior Court. And this is, you know, things that I've heard, I'm not an attorney, but typically what would happen is that you appeal the bylaw itself to say that, you know, the bylaw is overreaching or whatever, and you would have to talk to an attorney about that. And there's plenty of, whether it's 45 or 60 days, if it's 60 days, that's how long you have to appeal the order of condition issued under the bylaw. Because this doesn't exist under the Wetlands Protection Act.
Can I just cut in for 1
Sure.
second?
Yep.
There's a storm getting pretty intense here, so I'm gonna make you co-host just in case something happens.
I just heard some rumbling, so yep, that's fine. We can double dip here and
Okay, thank you.
okay. Yeah. So so I think, you know, I don't know if there's anything else to say, and it's really just going to be each of the commissioners voting based on what they've had all this information, whether they feel the enhancements are sufficient. So so do I have a motion to close the hearing and issue an order of conditions?
I'll make a motion to close the hearing and issue an order of conditions with any special conditions or findings as discussed in this meeting and prior meeting for 55 Weston Street.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
I'll second that motion.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. So I'll do a roll call vote. Jonathan,
Yes.
Amira,
No.
and I am also a yes. It carries 2-1. So I also like to thank everyone for voting the way you want to, because I appreciate that. That's the way it should go. So
100%.
yep. So basically, so that's been, you know, approved and so forth. And so we just have to do a little work on some of the conditions and so forth. But yeah, reach out to Leah or staff and you'll be able to find that information. So
Well, thank you. Appreciate the commission's time. I appreciate it that it was a tricky one, and appreciate everyone's deliberations. And yeah, thank you. Appreciate all the work you do for the town.
all right, good luck.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Stay well.
All right. Yep. So Leah, what's up? What's left?
We have requests for partial certificates of compliance for 94 McGill. They're in phase 2, so they weren't covered by our big phase 1 release.
Yep.
But as usual, the lot itself is all set. Work's done on the lot. They have a lawn growing, and there's no outstanding items specific for them. So I recommend issuing them the partials.
Okay. Do I have a motion for you know, wait a minute, before I get there. So Noah, I did not ask you to vote on that simply because you hadn't been involved in it. So this one coming up again, so a partial certificate of compliance basically is a process at the end of this. For this is a particular lot in a particular subdivision that we're voting on. Leah's staff has gone out and they've already done the inspection and they've reported out to that. So again, I'll leave it up to you whether you feel comfortable, you know, voting or abstaining. That's totally up to you. So leave that to you. All right. So do I have a motion for this certificate of compliance?
I'll make a motion to issue a partial certificates of compliance for 94 McGill Drive.
Do I have a second?
I'll second that motion.
Do a roll call vote. Jonathan,
Yes.
Amira,
Yes.
Noah.
I'll abstain.
Thank you. And I am also a yes, the motion carries. Anything else, Leah?
Yes, one more thing. Let me figure out how to share this here. So this just came to me today, from the town administrator. He was approached, by the owner of 84 Rear Snow Road, which is this triangle. He is considering moving forward with selling that property. The town owns the surrounding properties, so we own, this 24 Greeny Drive, where we could get access off of Greeny Drive.
Okay.
We own 7 Rear Institute Road, and then we own, I think it's this one, 7 Institute Road. So it could be a
Okay.
nice little corridor with a little trail or something, in the future.
Okay.
So he was just looking to gauge some interest. Of course, we would get it appraised for, you know, what do you call it? Like market value, and that's what
Yep.
the town would be able to pay. But just wanting to gauge interest. And I have a few data layers turned on here. It's got a certified vernal pool.
Okay.
Not the one that's up for sale, but the one that we already own. So I mean,
Yep.
that's a nice feature to show folks if there were to be
A
a trail
little
through
bit.
here.
Yeah. Can you zoom out just a little bit?
Yeah. More?
No, that's good. So what I'm looking for is where I live.
So East Street's up here.
Yeah, and just where as just west of Apple Ridge.
Over
Yeah.
here.
Yeah, I'm on the tiny little lot there. Okay, right where the E is. I'm just wanting to make sure I'm not within a, a certain distance and it doesn't look like it on the one that says the 25. 26 is my neighbor. Okay.
Oh, on this side.
You got it right there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like you want to know if you shouldn't weigh in on this kind of thing?
Correct. Yeah.
I
I don't think I'm that close,
you're,
but
you're pretty far away.
yeah. Yeah, okay. I know how big my neighbor's lot is, so. Okay. All right, that's cool. I just wanted to make sure I wasn't right next door. I didn't think I was, but that's cool. I mean, it would be nice that you make that connection. The other kind of interesting thing is that other parcel in the back that's landlocked, but that's a whole different
This one?
ownership and stuff. So
Which one?
that one right there, yeah. Oh,
Okay.
that's off of Apple Ridge. I don't know
Yeah.
that one. But then, yeah, okay. I don't know that one. I think I was thinking of that one there because they don't have sufficient access to it, and actually my neighbor bought it.
Okay.
So yeah, and he's not really looking to do anything. But anyways,
Pretty wet.
it is. He just it was in the past there were people trying to develop it, and he just wanted to own it instead. So good for him. So yeah, so I certainly I think that would be kind of nice since we have access already there, that if you could put a trail in there, that would be actually really nice. Mainly because I'm so damn close, but that would be really nice. So, others thoughts, Jonathan?
So Leah, if you zoom in on, it's the triangle, the green triangle is the lot in question,
Mhm.
which is currently landlocked. So we own 115A currently, and
Well,
that gives us, oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say the town, not Concom specifically, but it is town
Town of
property. Yep.
Okay. And that would give us adequate access. Is that where, like, if there was a little entrance for people to go, and if there was a trail in there, is that where we'd put a parking or
So
would they access it from the other side on the 16, or is there already one there? I'm not familiar with these spots. I know this kind of area of town, but I don't know it that well. So
yeah, and I mean, the town administrator and I only just started looking at it this afternoon, but we were thinking
Sure.
like, there's no, at least according to GIS, there's no wetlands over here on Institute, so Institute would probably be a better candidate for a little pull off the road small gravel parking lot, and people could walk through. The access off of Greenie would probably be more like neighborhood access. I mean, a couple
Mhm.
cars can park like in the cul-de-sac or something, but this side would probably be more for, you know, residents here wanting to access off the neighborhood. People driving there would probably come in off of Institute.
And then when you put all three of them together, it's pretty decent size.
Yeah, this
Yeah.
is 10 acres. This is
Yep.
15. This is 3.
I'm sorry if this was already answered, but are there already walking trails in those 2 parcels that the town already owns?
Not that I'm aware of, but there's always a chance people are doing something out in the woods that we don't know about.
Right.
Yeah, there could be some informal ones that people have developed, but
Right.
Sounds good. Thank you.
I don't know. I might have to walk over there and see what's going on.
Yeah.
And this
check it
sounds
out.
good to me. I'm on board with this. Definitely nice to add land.
Especially land that's connected to each other.
Yeah. So Lee, are you looking for a vote tonight or just that
I don't think
we're
so.
definitely interested or?
Yeah, I think it was just more for discussion. I don't think I need a motion or anything.
Okay. I think it's definitely worth to investigate. And if you need any pictures or anything, let me know
Sure.
because it's just down the street. So,
And you can take a stroll.
yep, I can take a walk. So,
All right.
yep. Yeah.
That's all I have.
All right. That's good. So Noah, do you have any questions?
No,
Welcome and
this was a good way to jump in.
okay. And just be aware of the town and the commission belongs to MACC, Mass Association of Conservation Commissioners. There's a whole series of training, especially for new commissioners. You can reach out to Leah. She'd be happy to kind of give you that information. I think Amara's taken some of those, and I happen to be on the board for MACC, so I get to see a lot of that stuff, and on the education committee. So there's a lot of really good things. There's a lot of like lunchtime, you know, lessons that you can go for like it's an hour or so that you can listen into. Plus, they do 2 conferences. The next conference is a fall conference at Devon's. That's in September, October. I forget when it is. So, and they're, you know, if you want to learn more about the different aspects of conservation, there's a lot to choose from. So, but Leah can help you with that. So, other than that, thank you for joining us, and don't hesitate to ask questions because it'll take you a while to kind of pick up on things. So, and then I guess the only other thing is wait for the storm because I just hear rumbling and rumbling. So, other than
Definitely
that,
here in Northbridge.
okay, it's off to my south. So, yeah, it's definitely coming. So, anything else? Anyone else have any questions or
Just
other than
one
that?
more motion.
I'll just note that the reason that I've been doing this and this is because there's a fly buzzing around my office and I've been trying to kill it for the last hour or so.
But
So
you can borrow my kittens because they love
that's
chasing
what I
flies.
need.
They
That's what
really
I
do.
well, they'd probably clear off my entire desk. So
Oh yes,
yeah,
they would do that too. But
a cannonball through the desk or something. But yeah,
Yep.
that's why I've been trying to wave at this thing and get it out of here, but bugging
Yep.
the hell out of me. So
glad your coworker's still hanging out there. So
still busy working down here. Motion to adjourn.
thank you very much. Do I have a second?
I'll second that motion.
We have a motion and a second. We will do a roll call vote. Amira,
Yes.
Noah, you happen
Yes.
to be in front of me, and Jonathan.
Yes.
I am also a yes. The motion carries. As always, thanks for everyone for showing up.